And that was left by Shannon Knoll, and you're back here talking sport, and it's time to move away from the AFL and turn our attention to some cricket.
Well, yeah, I mean, we haven't spoken to Kenny for a few weeks.
I've been missing him.
Yeah, because obviously the Scorchers don't play, the Ashes are coming up, so it's been quite interesting. The Australian Ashes squad was mentioned and announced yesterday, and we know that Kenny is a cricket tragic. He'd be all over it. He'd have his opinion on it. He'd probably have a couple that he'd be crossing off, and there'd be a couple probably on his list.
Oh, he's probably sitting in Pat's bedroom right now having to talk to Mr. Cummins.
I mean, I don't know whether George Bailey should be a selector. I reckon Kenny would probably be a good chance to be recruited into the selectors. And Kenny, are you listening over there in Melbourne?
Oh, mate, I'm not in Melbourne at the moment.
Aren't you?
No.
Where are you coming from?
We're live from the Grange Golf Course over here in Adelaide, mate. I'm playing in the Pro-Am of the Live Golf today.
Ah, the Live Golf, yeah. It's over there in South Australia. Been a lot of promo about that. So you're having a couple of little reds over there in South Australia, are you?
Oh, mate, well, as I say, mate, as you know, mate, I'm an emergency player for the Carlton Footy Club and was over here for the... And as soon as I didn't get a game, they asked me if I wanted to hang around and play in the Live Pro-Am. I was hoping to actually play with Phil Mickelson. That's who they told me I was playing with. But I ended up playing with some hobo that I think they must have found at the Spearmint Rhino on the streets of Adelaide. Some long-haired lout called Cam Smith or someone like that. He reckons he goes all right, but, mate, I'm not sure.
Well, you get around, Kenny, but you've been able to have a bit of time to look over the Australian squad, surely. And I'm no doubt you'd have your opinion on the squad, whether you agree to it, whether you think there's been a couple that are lucky to be in the squad, and whether there's been a couple that are probably unlucky to be selected.
Unlucky not to be selected, you mean?
Yeah, unlucky not to be selected.
Good one, Mitch. You started well. Yeah, mate, look, I must admit, when the squad came out yesterday afternoon, there were 13 guys I thought that would pick themselves for the tour, especially given that George Bailey and the other selectors have come out and said that they're only picking the squad for the Test Grand Final or the World Cup of Test, which they're playing against India in the first two tests of the English Ashes series. And of those 13 guys I thought picked themselves, two of them not even in the squad. And for the life of me, I can't work it out. How Peter Hanscom and Cameron Bancroft have not made the 17 is beyond me.
Yeah, look, I thought Bancroft was very stiff, but he's not really a flavour of the Australian selectors, is he?
No, mate, he's the Promite of the Vegemite thing at the moment. Mate, how you can score close to 1,000 runs in a Sheffield Shield season and not make the national squad? But it leads me to think that there's an underlying issue there, maybe the hangover from Sandpaper Gate, or something along those lines. Because there is, you go through the squad and you look at, say, mate, fantastic. I must say to see Mitch Marsh, the big Bison, make the squad, and obviously they've picked him simply for the reason that Cam Green is not going to play 5 tests, not going to play 6 tests in a row because he's a big unit. He's subject to injury, and also he's that valuable they can't probably afford to play him in 6 back-to-back tests. So Bison comes in as that like-for-like change. And if you look at the other like-for-likes, you've got, let's say, Hazelwood breaks down, you've got Boland to come in. If Carey injures himself, you've got English in the squad. If Lyon goes down, you've got Todd Murphy. I can't for the life of me see how Harris and Renshaw are like-for-like in any of those capacities. If we lose, it's not like-for-like for either Uzi or Warner, Harris. And, mate, Renshaw must have he's got something over the Australian selectors. I know he had a fantastic or prolific Australian A tour in New Zealand, but they were playing some pretty average, on some pretty flat decks against some pretty average bowling attacks. And, mate, you and I could have, in fact, anyone could have made runs against those. So, for Hanscom and Bancroft to miss out is a real head shaker for me.
Well, there's one guy there at the bottom of the squad on the graphic I'm looking at, Dave Warner. What's your thoughts? Do you think he should have held his spot, or do you think that Bancroft should have taken his position in the squad?
Well, mate, we've had that discussion. I think it was the first time I was on, and I think if you look at the way the selectors have picked it, they'll go into that the World Cup of Test. Warner, Uzi Khawaja, Labuschagne, Smith, Greenhead either at 5 or 6. You can swap them around. Carey, Stark, Hazelwood if he's fit, Lyon, and Cummins. So. Look, I think Warner's done enough. I mean, he made 200 the last gig he had in Australia. He's certainly batting well enough in the IPL. He was smoking him the other day and got out to an absolute blinder of a catch behind the wicket. So he's certainly smoking, but T20's a different kettle of fish. And against the Duke ball, Warner's been found to be wanting of recent.
Yeah.
Especially in the last...
Anderson and Broad have generally been able to pick him up in the slips or caught behind for not many runs quite a few times, and that would be the concern for the Australian selectors, surely.
Absolutely, and if you look at the way that Dave bats, and I go back to what I said before. I'm not his greatest fan, but you can't knock the service that he's been to Australian cricket. I know he's been sort of, he's had issues going on behind him probably right throughout his career, but Dave's biggest problem is he plants his feet and wants to smelt the ball from outside off. And when you're playing against a Duke's ball that's going to move both ways, and you've got guys of the ilk of Broad and Jimmy Anderson, who's he's the best seam bowler we've ever seen. Yeah. He is found wanting, and unless Warner goes back to playing back inside the crease and then moving his front foot forward as opposed to planting it down the wicket and just wanting to smelt it to all parts of the park off a static base, he's going to struggle in England, which would be a shame because he deserves to finish his career in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, well, being a left-hander...
And that's coming from a bloke who doesn't rate him. Yeah.
Being a left-hander, do you think that's an advantage or do you think it's a disadvantage with those opening bowlers?
It used to be a fantastic advantage for our left-handed batsmen. I mean, you look at blokes like JL and Matty Hayden, Mr. Cricket, guys like that. When the Poms and our opposition teams, they didn't know how to bowl to left-handers because left-handers were, you'd have one or two in a side. Now we've got 1, 2, we've got heaps of them going around at the moment. And you think of, especially Hayden and Langer, how they took sides apart. I remember, back when I was a young fella, mate, if you were going at 2.5 and over in Test cricket, that was rocking and rolling along. And Langer and Hayden took it a whole new level, scoring 4 and 5 and over, because they just didn't know how to bowl the left-handers. No. But they've worked them out now. Yeah. They've worked out that you can come around the wicket, that it's not, it's not against the Bible to come around the wicket and bowl to them and try and shape the ball away. And also board blokes like Dave Warner out because Warner wants to score quickly. So they bowl a 4th and 5th stump line to him, wanting him to attack the ball, and he will attack the ball because that's his natural instinct, and he snicks off.
Yeah.
Or he carts it softly to cover point.
Yeah, well, I mean, the bowling attack's going to obviously be very different to the bowling attack that Australia had in India with less spinners. Do you generally think that they just play line?
You mean line?
Yeah, sorry. So just the one spinner in the team?
It depends. I mean, the first test in the Ashes is at Edgbaston. And Edgbaston normally will take spin on the third day, the third and the fourth day, and flattens out just a quagmire in the fifth. So if Todd Murphy's going to get a game, he's going to get a game in the first test, and they'll leave probably Hazelwood out because he's well short of a gallop, and obviously they're going to keep Cummins and Stark in. So if Murphy's going to get a role. The little, I think, what are they calling him? Sorry, mate, my mind's gone right out the door. Harry Potter. Geez, he looks like Harry Potter, doesn't he? And he's got a little bit of a magician about him as well in India. But yeah, mate, if he's going to get a role, he'll get a role in the first test.
Yeah. And that's a great little wrap there of the Ashes squad. But you've been watching a little bit of the BBL and a couple of the WA boys went pretty well in the last couple of days?
The IPL.
IPL,
You're doing well, Mitch. You're doing well, mate. Tonight. Mate, have you been on the sponsors product again tonight? Have you?
Well, IPL is the name of our radio station. It was a little bit of a combination of the cricket and our radio station there.
For that reason, you would have thought you'd got it right. Mate, look, I'm not a great T20 fan, but I have been watching a little bit of the IPL, especially sort of, I suppose, trying to get a gauge on the form and fitness of a few blokes rolling around. Especially blokes like Greeny. Cam Greeny went out and smashed 64 off 40 the other night. And I think at one stage he was 19 off 24 balls or so. Don't quote me, but it was something like that. So he went absolutely ballistic there and at the end of these innings. But his stroke play and his ability to hit the ball to all parts of the ground, and mate, he's just. I don't think I've seen a stronger upper body on a cricketer since probably Stoinis or Marsh. They're talking about blokes who are unlucky not to get a right, but Stoinis should have been in that 17 to go to England anyway. Despite the fact he's another WA boy, but yeah, mate, Greeny was belting them around. One of the not Berendorf. Who took four for the other night for the Mumbai Indians? Can't remember, but the Australians are going pretty well over there. So
I think it was Berendorf, wasn't it?
Was it Berendorf? Can't remember, mate. Yeah. Sorry. There's so much cricket on. Like, I'm getting me $12.50 out of KO every month. At the moment, I can tell you. It's been a fantastic competition this year, the IPL, and all power to them. When they put the cap in and they made the teams equal in the amount of money that they could spend and equal in the amount of overseas players that they could have and capped it right out, it's a great argument for other competitions like the EPL and the AFL and other competitions around the world to see how even some of these teams are. Because most of the games have come down to either the last over or a couple of runs. And, it's actually been... It hasn't been the greatest cricket. It hasn't been like huge scores, past scores 150, 160. But the quality of the cricket that's been played has been exceptional. So there's a lesson in that to a lot of other franchise sports around the world.
I was very surprised that I think it was last year the BBL Hurricane player Tim David, wasn't he paid the most out of the auction?
2.7 million. He wasn't the most out of the auction. He was the most. And someone will ring up later and say and prove me wrong, but he was the highest paid international player. I think it was 2.7 million or something like that. Yeah, young Timmy David, another West Australian boy actually. I think he's out of Cosmos Cricket Club originally.
Okay.
Don't quote me, but boy can he's got an eye on him like a dead fish, that kid. Doesn't want to play long form cricket, and that's his own choice. And mate, at 2.7 million a year, why would you want to play 4 days in the stinking hot sun?
One player I'd like to ask your opinion. I'm surprised that he's so dominant for the Scorchers and for WA, but the skipper of the Scorchers there, he never gets a test. Ashton Turner. What's your thoughts there?
Look, Ashton Turner's probably in the mould of Timmy David a little bit, where he's got a very young family. He's committed to that family. He's a super bloke, and make no mistake that the success that West Australia have discovered both in 4-day cricket and 1-day cricket is in huge part due to Ashton Turner and his captaincy and his overseeing of a pretty young squad. Combined with obviously people like Sean and Mitch Marsh and others and Josh English to a certain extent. But again, mate, he's a guy that's made a decision that he doesn't want to be travelling all over the country playing 4-day cricket. He prefers the 1-day format. I agree with you. If he'd taken another path, he would definitely be in the selectors' eyes for Test cricket, and look, probably still could. But his commitments to his family first, and mate. Crocky Moses. Who could blame me for that?
Yeah, well,
if you saw his daughter at the presentation of the BBL Cup, when she was standing there looking in it like it should have been full of M&Ms, was absolutely priceless. You could see he was just fuming that she was taking the limelight. But he's got a beautiful family behind him, and he deserves to be part of that.
It was just because I've noticed, especially playing for the Scorchers, he performs every game, and when the chips are down and they really need a big innings, he rarely lets them down, and he can score quite heavily and quite quickly. And I was always wondering, could he ever be selected to play for Australia in the Test? Because he could be quite a good number 6, I would have thought, when sometimes Australia lose a few quick wickets in the middle order. But he could be a good steady player just to tick the runs over and create a partnership with his other teammates.
Yeah, you look. I suppose Ash probably looked at the landscape of Australian cricket, back 5 or 6 years ago, and went, okay, so who am I going to replace? Am I going to replace Labuschagne? Am I going to replace Smith? Head in Wade, Matty Wade in earlier days. Where do I fit into that squad? And probably realised that it was an uphill battle for him.
Yeah.
You go back to, you talk about, the courage and the determination of Blake. Go back to the 2022 BBL Grand Final, which was at Marvel last year. WA were gone. They were. Yeah. I was there. I was actually sitting with a group of West Australian expats. And
you never miss a good event or a good game, can you? I mean, you're over in South Australia now. You've been at the footy round 1. You get to the cricket. You get to the Formula 1. I'm amazed that you have the time to get to all these events. What do you think, Esther?
Well, I just want his frequent flyer points.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Or the job that he's got that allows him to get all this time off.
Yeah, well, it's actually the Carlton Footy Club have got me on frequent Greyhound points at the moment. I have to go on the bus while everyone else goes on the plane. But yeah, I think WA were 4 for 35 in that game against Sydney, the Pink guys, whoever they are again. The Sydney Sixers. And when Ash Turner walked out the bat, and I said in the back of my head, it's you or nothing, Skip. This is your time to stand up. And he brought him back into the game. Look, they bowled exceptionally well and they fielded exceptionally well. But he could certainly play representative cricket for Australia in short form. And I think the selectors, probably have to will look at that come the next short form series in Australia. Yeah. Definitely.
Now,
he's a great bloke too.
Kenny, talking about the AFL earlier, it's pretty tough for your team, the Hawks. They're going through a rebuild. They're finding it tough to play the 4 quarters, but they were quite impressive and quite competitive against GWS. You would have been happy to see that.
I'm actually following women's lacrosse now, mate. I've decided to give the footy away, as you probably your Richmond and West Coast supporters are as well. But look, mate, they played some beautiful football in 30, 45-second patches against GWS. Geez, that last quarter where they just ran out of legs. But mate, we've got the youngest squad in the competition. We're rebuilding for a reason, and look, it's going to be, if you're part of the family club or part of the happy club at Hawthorn, we're not going to be overly happy for the next 2 or 3 years or so. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. We've got some great young guys rolling around, and the best thing is that they go down and watch the Box Hill Hawks play.
Yeah.
And some of the young kids, when I'm not traversing around the countryside, some of the young kids that we got playing down there at Box Hill, and the amount of scouts from other clubs that are down watching the Box Hill Hawks is amazing. So we've got some great depth as well, despite the fact it may not look like that at the moment.
Yeah. Now, we have a segment that SD and I love each week, and we might include you if we can, Kenny. There might be one that you might be able to throw in here. It's called Under the Bus, and we know that's not just about AFL, it's about other sports as well. So you might have a cricket one there, even something from the IPL. Is there anybody that you'd like to throw under the bus this week for anything? Or
hang on, mate. Hang on, mate. Cam Smith just getting me another cocktail. Yeah, make it a decent one. and it's your boy, mate. I don't know who you're throwing under the bus so far, SD.
Well, I think
not you.
I think you might have even thought there might have been one involving the baseball. Is there one you'd like to add in there?
The New York Yankees the other night against, sorry, mate, I'm just swallowing an olive. The New York Yankees the other night against the Minnesota Twins, gave up 9 home runs in the first inning and got absolutely smashed. It ended up being an incredibly boring game after a magnificent start with Minnesota winning 11-2. The New York Yankees superstar, whose name escapes me, but he got paid, just signed a 9-year deal for $360 million. Got struck out 3 times in a row. But, I'd like throw the Yankees under the bus, especially given the Yankees. Christian Vasquez, who's the catcher for the Minnesota Twins, he had 4 at-bats, 2 runs, 3 homers, and 1 RBI. Now, I looked him up after the game because I couldn't believe that Minnesota won 11-2 because I actually turned it off after the 3rd inning because there was no point watching it. Christian Vasquez could not hit a baby in a pram. He couldn't hit 100 on a Harley, this guy. His RBI is woeful. His average is woeful, and he's on 531,000 American a year. When most of these guys are on like 6 or 7 million a year, this guy's on half a million. So the fact that this bloke managed to put him over the rope 3 times is testament to how poor the Yankees were, or how poor their pitching roster was. I got another one for you. Going back to cricket, Arjun Tendulkar,
right,
supposedly son of the great Sachin Tendulkar, made his IPL debut for the Mumbai Indians the other night.
Yeah.
If you remember Sachin, mate.
The little master, wasn't he?
Mm.
Yeah, the little master. He turns 50 on the 24th on Monday, on the 24th of April, Sachin. So early birthday present for Sachin. With his 6'2" son, so surely Arjun's adopted because Sachin was 5 foot in a tea leaf. Yeah. Medium pace bowler, all over the shop like a busted packet of Jaffas, and it was. If you get a chance, replay Arjun Tendulkar bowling. It is the funniest thing in the world. He
got smacked around a bit, did he?
Oh, he actually shapes him around a little bit. He reminds me a little bit of Mitch Starc, the way he moves the ball around. Right. But the action running in, he looked like a smack out on a pogo stick as he came into bowl. I don't know.
So
we're allowed to say
Yankees, they're under the bus, SD, and then Tendulkar, he's under the bus.
What about the Mumbai Indians?
The Mumbai Indians, well, yeah, they're under.
What about the Mumbai Indians? Now,
lucky enough,
IPL,
there's a few spare chairs here on the bus. You've got another one there, Kenny?
Well, what about the Mumbai Indians? I was thinking about this the other night, right? They're IPL, one of the wealthiest franchises going around. How much did they pay the bloke that came up with their name? Where are we from? Oh, Mumbai. And what are we? We're from India. Oh, let's be the Mumbai Indians. Oh, there you go, mate. There's $7 million. Like, come on, guys, make a bloody effort. But that's it, mate. I normally have my 3 seats on the bus. There you go.
Very good, very good. Well, I've got a couple to add in there. Now, for the last few under the buses, anybody that I've thrown in has won the next week. So we started off, Ross Lyon was under the bus before round 1 due to the fact that he was letting a few tactics out. They won round 1. And then we threw Luke Beveridge under the bus because the Doggies started off very poorly. They got up and had a win. Last week I threw the Dockers under the bus. They've had a win. Now, I'm not overly confident here, but you'd have to throw North Melbourne under the bus. They got absolutely spanked by Brisbane. It was over 70 points there. After being quite promising in the first two rounds, but I think they've had their 2 wins, and I'll be surprised if they win another one all season. So I'm throwing North Melbourne this week under the bus. We'll have to see whether they rebound and have a win this week against Gold Coast. You just never know, SD.
Well, if they do and they get up, I'm going to have to rub your head or something like a little Buddha, because you've got the knack.
Not my Buddha beer belly here, because that's going all right too. But so North Melbourne are under, and I'm going to have to throw the Richmond Sports Performance manager under the bus as well. Richmond have got around 12 senior players injured at the moment.
Yep.
Now, if Tom Lynch is in a moon boot during the pre-season, and then they say he's hardly even playing, combat training, and he's just doing laps before round 1, and then in round 4 he fractures his foot and he's out for 3 months, I don't think that's great preparation. You've got Nankervis has gone down short. They even suggested that he was going to have a tight calf in round 1. Round 2, he popped it. He's been out for 3 weeks, and there's many more hamstrings. Josh Gibskis, who probably should be in the team, he did a really bad hamstring in pre-season. So I don't think that they've prepared and trained well this pre-season to normally. So I'm throwing him under the bus. He's going to have to improve his style of preparation, because the Tigers are playing pretty awful, let's be honest.
I'll ask you this question then, SD. If the Roos get up and knock off the Gold Coast Suns on Sunday afternoon, they're up there at Heritage Bank Stadium, does Stewie Jew come under the pump? Is Stewie Jew's job on the line if the Kangaroos knock him off?
Has to, surely.
You'd think so.
Yeah. I mean, they've been talking about it for the last few years, that he's lucky to get a contract. They've been saying, this is the year they're going to make the finals.
Heard it all before.
Yeah, he's got to deliver. Is it the last year of his contract, Kenny?
No, he signed a contract extension through to the end of 2024 during pre-season, didn't he?
Right, yeah. Well, I think Cochrane did get behind him. He's got to deliver.
Because he's a good coach. He's just coaching the wrong side.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, well, there's a few under the bus. We've got 5 under the bus.
Yeah, well, I'm not adding any this week.
Yeah, well, the Dockers come out. Because they had a win. It wasn't a great win.
Yeah, but they can't get too cocky, because I reckon they'll be under the bus again.
Yeah.
I'm not confident at all with them, and their fans, I know, are losing a bit of faith.
Yeah, what's your tip on the Dockers Friday night over here at Optus Stadium, Kenny? Do you think the Dockers can have another win, or do you think the Dogs will be too strong?
Mate, look, they're both one of those teams. It's like following Hawthorn. They're both of these sides are massively frustrating if you were a supporter. The Dockers are good for 2 quarters and then woeful. They're Jekyll and Hyde, and the Bulldogs rely so heavily on 5 or 6 players. And if the Bont has a bad game, they're off. If Libba doesn't get 40 possessions, he doesn't get 40 possessions ever, but if he doesn't get 25, 30 possessions, they lose. So Bailey Smith, if Bailey Smith has an off night, and then Bailey Smith has not had a good start to the season, they are in serious trouble. But
they've got a lot of firepower, the Dogs, though. I mean, you get Norton, Ugen-Hagel, they've got Lobb, and then sometimes English goes down there as well. There's a lot of tall timber, and that'd stretch the Dockers if they're all firing.
Yeah, the Bulldogs have beaten the Dockers in the Dockers won the last game in round 21 of 2022. But if you go back over the 3 games before that, the Bulldogs have beaten the Dockers by an average of 6 goals over the course of those last 3 games. Now, the last time they met in 21 was at Optus Stadium, and if you remember, pretty sure that the Bulldogs were up by 4 or 5 goals. No, sorry, that's not true. The Dockers were up by a heap, and the Bullies come flooding home.
They did
in the end. And there was that outrageous 50-metre penalty given when I can't remember who it was from the Bulldogs put his hand on his head out of frustration at an umpire's decision, and they gave it dissent. And it went from being an 8-point game to a 14-point game, and the Dockers, kicked a couple of points. So they were probably unlucky to lose that one, the Dogs. But in my footy tipping, I've actually picked the Dockers. And you know what? I'm just going to change my mind and pick the Dogs.
I've gone the Bulldogs. I just think that the Dogs are just warming up, and I just think that they've just got too much firepower on the forward line, and it's just going to stretch the Dockers back line. And I think the Dogs will probably win by, I think I've tipped them by 11 points, SD.
Yeah, I've got them down for a win by 22 points, and I've ordered some tetanus for the Dockers because I reckon they're going to get a few dog bites.
What do you get when a dog bites you? You get it's not tetanus. You get
rabies.
Rabies.
That's it. Yeah.
Bit of lockjaw.
A bit of lockjaw.
Yeah.
Gee, you're coming out with a few today, SD.
That's tetanus, SD. Lockjaw is tetanus.
Oh, is it?
So there you go. I've had lockjaw.
That's why
You
I'm
wouldn't
not a
think so.
doctor.
You wouldn't think I'd had lockjaw by the amount I talk, but the doggies for me in a late change. Power, good cricket wrap this one. Power, I reckon the Lions knock over the Giants for me. The game of the round's the Cats, the Swans. So, and I reckon the Swans in that one, despite the fact they're at GMHB Stadium. And Hawthorn should win against the Crows, despite the fact that we're in poor form down at UTA. But yeah, so there's a couple of great matches. And so they're still there? Or I cut out?
Yeah, no, we're just listening to you, Kenny. We're all ears here.
And of course, mate, my birthday on Tuesday, the Anzac Day game, the Magpies versus the Bombers, and hopefully this will be the Bombers' descent into obliteration, because I can't stand it when the Bombers are playing well.
Well, with Zach Merritt out there, their new skipper, I think Collingwood will be too strong, and I think, I think they've been playing very well, but it's only very early in the season. I'll be very surprised if they can keep this form up for the whole year.
Well, they've played nobody of consequence, have they? Let's face it.
Yeah. Well, they haven't played.
Realistically,
they haven't played the Tigers in Dreamtime. We've got a pretty good rap, so hopefully the Tigers will get a few back by then, and we'll be able to give them a little bit of a lesson. We love beating the Bombers on
Certainly
Dreamtime.
do.
Yeah.
Certainly do.
Well, Kenny, thank you very much for your time. I know that you're very busy there, knocking down a few martinis and a few drinks. So thanks for your time. Great to have you on the show. I've enjoyed that.
Just quickly before I go, mate, a couple of new sponsors for the tour to England for the Ashes commentary.
Oh yes.
Yes, Jenny Craig.
Right.
She's on board because apparently Seagull Airways are not happy with my weight at the moment.
All right.
So she's offered to come in and help. She's given me a 2-for-1 offer.
Right.
She's going to work on both cheeks and my backside at the same time, try and lose a bit of weight. And I was also talking to Bill Shatner, William Shatner.
Oh.
You know William Shatner?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, of course. He's the one of the clothes makers down there in Bridge Street in Melbourne, Shatner Pants. I'm not sure if you've heard about that one. Now, poor old Bill, his business is not going that well, so he's decided to sponsor us, and I'm going to be wearing Shatner trousers the whole time I'm over there in England, mate. So big shout out to Bill Shatner.
That's great. You've got a couple of sponsors on board, because it'll be a fairly large account, I would have thought, there for a few frothies over there, Kenny.
That's it, mate. Well, he's going to have to give me trousers in 32, 34, 36 and 38 and 40 for each of the 5 test matches, because I reckon that's how much I'll put on over the course of the journey. But look, it's great to talk to you guys and just dribble rubbish for half an hour or so, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you again.
It's been great, Kenny. Been great, and obviously the Ashes are coming up in June, so you'll be getting excited for that. We'll try and catch up with you maybe just before the Ashes and have a chat to you about that coming up, and keep in touch with us throughout the series. Thanks, guys. Be safe. Look after your families, and be well.
Cheers, Kenny.
Thanks, Kenny.
See you, Mitch. Bye.
He's a great bloke, isn't he?
He is good fun to talk to. He loves his sport. He's a bit of a larrikin, and he's cricket tragic. He loves his cricket, but he likes all sorts of sport. He likes his footy, and he's a great guy, and it's great to have him on regularly as our guest. Well, SD, that was a pretty good chat.
Yeah, but before we move on though, I just want to say that we've had someone call in.
Right.
Alan, who's a big fan of the show.
Yeah.
He's pretty happy to see Mitch Marsh back in the squad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he made a point of saying that. So interesting.
Yeah,
interesting choice.
It is good. Well, there's 3 WA boys in the squad, but obviously with Cam Green and also Josh Inglis. So that's great. I'm a bit surprised that Cam Bancroft isn't in. And I think he deserves his spot, but
we'll see how they go.
Yeah, you can only fit so many in, and at this stage, unless one of the opening batsman has poor form for a couple of tests, he might get a late call-up. You never know. It's happened before, or if there's an injury. We'll just have to wait and see. But anyway, that was our cricket wrap with Kenny. We've got another interview coming up. This would be a great interview with a young fellow called Eli Monahan, who's a junior golfer. He'll be coming up a little bit later on, but we might go to a couple of songs to rock on here, SD, and we'll come back shortly. We've got plenty more to talk about before we then we'll have a chat with Eli. So keep listening in, guys, and we'll go to a few songs and we'll talk to you again after the break.
Back soon. You're listening with Talking Sport.